It is time to hear a presentation on our new Bishop's Challenge for the year. Bishop Bartholomew will introduce us to the Bishop's Challenge, the Jehu Jones mission.
Thank you. Over a year ago, I received a letter from retired Pastor Peter Olson. He had written to every synod bishop in the ELCA, as well as the presiding bishop. His letter asked synods and the church-wide expression to set aside a reparational tithe of all income to be used to support Black churches. I presented that letter to our Synod Council, which immediately authorized a diverse task group to prepare a response to Pastor Olson's letter. Rather than react hastily or out of white guilt, or assume we knew what reparations would mean or do for the descendants of enslaved people in this church, the task group came up with another way, a way of learning and study and listening and then action. The result of which is the Bishop's Challenge, the Jehu Jones mission. The original Synod Council task group committed to staying on and expanding their makeup to be the project team for this challenge. You will be hearing from them as to the scope of this challenge, why it's important, and what we hope to learn and do as a result. For me, there are several key components. First, Scripture calls us to be repairers of the breach when relationships have come apart. We are called to reach out, confess, make amends, and reconcile with those whom we have hurt. This challenge is a small step in doing that. Second, studying and learning from our history in order to make a new way forward is the work non-Black people need to do. As a white person, I need to advocate new ways of moving into the future. I need to listen to those hurt by my ancestors to learn what restoration and reconciliation look like. In this year of the Bishop's Challenge, we will hear the story of Pastor Jehu Jones and how the church at large failed him so many years ago. We will hear, many of us for the first time, of laws which were put in place in our very own communities to keep Black people out. We will read together and learn together throughout this year. We will be challenged by what we learn. And finally, we will be called to action, to gather funds to be used as scholarships for educational opportunities for African American emerging leaders. And you will be asked to contribute to a quilt that will hang in the Synod office to remind us of our interdependence in this ongoing work. I hope you'll join me and the Bishop's Challenge team.
Thank you, Bishop Bartholomew. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Linderman from Redeemer in Ramsey. As you just heard, the bishop has placed a new year-long challenge before us and our congregations. There's been so much in the news this past year regarding racism and racial inequality in our country. We know that it is part of our history and that it continues to harm individuals, communities, and our mutual life together. As Lutherans, we look to our faith in Jesus Christ to help us understand and process what is going on, both in our own hearts and in the lives of others, and then work together for the common good. Our New Jersey Synod and many of our congregations have been focusing on racism for some years now. Other congregations are now beginning to take on this work. This year's Bishop's Challenge is an invitation for us all, congregations and individuals, to enter into the work of growing our awareness and deepening our love. The Bishop's Challenge, the Jehu Jones mission, specifically addresses the issue of racism and its legacy in our society as it is experienced by persons of African descent. Before we talk about our plans and goals for this challenge, we'd like to begin with Jehu Jones' story. Lamar Randolph, a student at the United Lutheran Seminary, will share the story of Jehu Jones with us now.
Hello. I would just like to first say hello. My name is Roger Randolph, and I am a second-year Master's of Divinity student here at United Lutheran Seminary in Philadelphia. And I also bring greetings from my home synod, the Southwest Pennsylvania Synod. But to speak on Pastor Jones, he was born in 1786 in Charleston, South Carolina. Jehu Jones Jr., the son of Jehu Sr. and Abigail Jones. Both were enslaved by a local tailor named Christopher Rogers, and Jehu was born into that slavery as well. In 1798, Jehu Sr. would purchase their freedom and start successful businesses, opening his own tailoring shop and a hotel. After spending a number of years as members of St. Philip's Protestant Episcopal Church, Jehu Jr. and his wife Elizabeth joined the Lutheran Church of German Protestants, now St. John's Lutheran Church, once they began to allow Black members in 1816. By late 1831, the American Colonization Society, an organization that was founded in 1816 to send free Blacks back to Africa, had made plans with the Black community members in Charleston, South Carolina, to settle residents in their new colony, Liberia. Jones was in support of this, writing essays to convince more people to join the trip. The ACS offered him a school teacher position as well as land and a handsome salary. Jones was well versed in theology. He had been giving lectures and teaching members of Charleston's Black community the foundational views of the Lutheran faith. With this in mind, he thought that he would be able to further his ministry, becoming a missionary in Liberia. Impressed by his knowledge and understanding that he would immediately be leaving for Liberia, Jehu Jones Jr. was ordained by the New York Synod on October 24th, 1832, making him the first Black man ordained in the Lutheran Church. When he tried to return to South Carolina to immigrate to Liberia, he was arrested based on a law that had prevented free Blacks from entering the state. Told by a judge to either leave the state or be jailed, Jones abandoned his home and moved to Philadelphia. Jones was told by white pastors in New York and in Pennsylvania that he would be better served by joining the Methodist, the Presbyterian, or Baptist churches, because they already had Black clergy in churches. Jones refused this because he, his wife Elizabeth, and all of their children were Lutheran. In June 1833, the German Evangelical Lutheran Synod of Pennsylvania, at their Synod Assembly, resolved that Mr. Jehu Jones be recognized by us as a regularly trained minister, and that he be appointed to labor as a missionary among the colored people in Philadelphia. Jones built a congregation that expanded upon the already existing Black churches in the city, like Mother Bethel AME Church, founded by Richard Allen in 1794. Another cohort of parishioners came from the African Episcopal Church of St. Thomas, founded by Allen's friend and first Black Episcopal priest, Absalom Jones, in 1794. By early 1834, St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church was ready for a building. Jones purchased 2 plots of land for St. Paul's for $750 in June of 1834. By the end of the month, the cornerstone had been laid and construction began. During construction, Jones traveled to raise money for St. Paul's, ministering to nearly 2,800 families, preaching, baptizing, marrying, and burying. He founded 3 additional congregations during this time in Gettysburg and Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Although his poor congregation was less than 20 members, they and other supporters had raised and paid more than $1,400 on the mortgage by the time the church was dedicated in 1836, more than 40% of their total debts. Still, another $2,000 were owed, and by 1837, lawsuits against Jones and the congregation began to be filed. Jehu Jones sought help on every front, with multiple articles being posted in the Lutheran Observer, a paper at the time. He volunteered half of his annual salary and reached out to the Pennsylvania Synod at their assembly both in writing and in person over the years. In 1837, after an unfilled pledge of $100 to be given to St. Paul's by the Synod urged Jones to transfer the property to white trustees, who would help pay the remaining $1,300 debt. Jones agreed, but the trustees never made a single payment on the property. After a canceled rummage sale fundraiser, Jones defaulted on the loans, and St. Paul's was sold at sheriff auction. The congregation continued to worship at other sites for some years after. This event would follow Jones. Toward the end of his life, he sought to start a church in the New York Synod, the same synod that ordained him. They rejected him and accused him of obtaining his ordination on a false pretense of missionary work in Liberia, and attributed all of St. Paul's financial woes to his mismanagement. On September 28, 1852, Jones died at the age of 66 in Camden, New Jersey. Briefly, that is the story of Jehu Jones Jr., but I feel that it would be incomplete without also telling the story of the second Black Lutheran pastor as well. Daniel Alexander Payne was born free in Charleston, South Carolina, 35 years after Jehu Jones. He founded several schools which were closed after legal restrictions were placed on free Black people following Nat Turner's rebellion. It was at that time that Payne decided he needed to leave South Carolina and was offered to move to Liberia to become a missionary as well. Instead, he declined and enrolled in classes at the Lutheran Theological Seminary at Gettysburg, now the Gettysburg campus of United Lutheran Seminary. He did not graduate due to issues with his eyesight after 2 years, but this did not stop his ministry. Recognizing his potential, he was ordained in 1837 by the Frankian Synod of the Lutheran Church, an abolitionist and pacifist group of Lutheran churches based out of New York State. His name remained on their synod roster until his death. Payne faced much of the same resistance as Jones, being told that there were no Lutheran churches for him. Unable to find a congregation, Payne left for the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the AME Church, where he would go on to be a patriarch and titan of the first Black denomination, the AME Church. His leadership and training at LTSG enabled Payne to shape the polity of the church as it exists today. Payne would go on to found multiple schools, including Wilberforce University, the first HBCU to be founded by Black people. He served as its president, the first Black university president in the United States. In 1852, Payne was elected and consecrated as the 6th bishop of the AME Church. His accomplishments not only represent the work of God in his life, they also represent the huge loss for the Lutheran Church that they suffered by denying Bishop Payne his calling. Within a decade, the Lutheran Church allowed its first Black pastor to lose his church and refused to find a congregation for its second Black pastor at all. It would not be until 1989 that the Reverend Dr. Richard Stewart of the Lutheran Theological Seminary at Philadelphia, now ULS, would discover What was once meant to be Pastor Jones' church was actually now the University of Pennsylvania's Mask and Wig Club. In 1998, a plaque was added at that site to honor him. A building whose cornerstone still reads, St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church, 1834. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to know more about Jehu Jones or even Daniel Alexander Payne, following the assembly, there will be an article about Jehu Jones posted on the Bishop's Challenge page of our Synod website, and there you will find other resources that will supplement this as well. Even after calling Jehu Jones to ministry, the Pennsylvania Lutheran Synod refused to sufficiently support his ministry and mission. This refusal is representative of a deeper pattern in our society of white-led institutions breaking faith with African Americans, creating stubborn legacies of uncompensated loss that compound over and over with each new generation. As you heard from Bishop Bartholomew a moment ago, in our baptism we are called to be repairers of the breach. This Bishop's Challenge invites us to be bold and earnestly enter this process of repair.
Thank you, Pastor Michael and Roger, for your wonderful words. I guess it's my turn at the moment. Hi, everyone. My name is Tristan Schmidt. I'm the assistant priest at Christ Church in Shore Hills, and I'm here to tell you about the first part of the challenge. Bishop Bartholomew invites you to have a conversation or conversations about race and become more aware of our history, specifically of the African American experience. We recognize that for some congregations, this will be an incredibly difficult step. And again, we recognize that. And if your congregation have already started the work, fantastic. Please continue to do so. The work to end racism is not a one and done deal. We have learned that just because we had a Black president, it does not mean racism has stopped. The work has to continue. So throughout the year, we will post comprehensive materials on the Bishop's Challenge page on the Synod website to help and guide you and your congregation through it. And we will try our best to make it accessible for everyone. The historical piece will address the uncompensated loss experienced by our African American brothers and sisters. It will cover the redlining of home sales, discrimination in the GI Bill, violence against early prosperous Black communities, topics that will continue to have consequences today, and more recently, the brown paper bag test. And if you don't know that, you'll find out soon enough. And of course, being disciples of Christ, as Bishop Bartholomew and Michael have said, our work is grounded biblically and theologically. So there will be suggested texts for Bible studies, to have time to reflect, to dwell, and to pray that all of us can participate in, either with a group or individually. As we take part in these conversations and learn more and more, many of us may find ourselves lamenting over the sin of racism and the damage it has done and continues to do so. But we know that from the ashes of the old, new possibilities arise. A new life happens. That is our baptismal and Easter promise, right? And we have a powerful transforming God of love that turns death into life, sin into forgiveness. And from adversity, the human spirit endures. And often we rise to the challenge. And I really think there have been newly rekindled flames that are desperate for the world to change for the better, to rise above. So, New Jersey Synod, are we ready to spring forth? And I want to stop here and ask you for your input. So you can text challenge, capital letters or lowercase, I don't think it matters, to 52886 and reply to this question. Why is it important for the New Jersey Synod to accept the Bishop's Challenge at such time as this? Now, you can say, Tristan, we know why it is important. We don't need to send you a text, and I hear you. But it will be good to name it and to be able to articulate it. So this text line will be open for the rest of the day. And I believe the message is getting sent on chat, so please jot down the text information. And while we cannot change the past, we want to know what we can do to make the world better today and for the future. How we can take one step as the repairers of the breach. And just like Zacchaeus felt the call to put right of what had been done in the past, I pray that we too feel the call to answer the call, to put things right for today and for the future. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Carla Hollingman, and I'm a member of Christ Lutheran Church in Woodcliff Lake and the Synod Council. I'm on the Bishop's Challenge Committee because I hope to learn the untold story of the injustices inflicted on our friends of African descent. And by next assembly, I'd like to be moving on a path forward that creates a fairer future. As you heard from Bishop Bartholomew and Pastors Linderman and Shin, the Bishop Challenge encompasses many things. The action part is to create a fund with a goal of raising over $50,000. The money will be used to support enrichment opportunities for emerging leaders of African descent. This will include supporting seminarian internships, camp stipends, and international mission travel, and it'll be administered through the Synod. A flyer explaining the Bishop's Challenge was included in the packet that you received before the assembly. And now for some logistical details, because who doesn't like logistics? You heard earlier how Jehu Jones bought 2 plots of land in Philadelphia to build his Lutheran church. It was a church where African Americans could finally sit in any pew they chose and participate fully. Each of those plots cost $375. So now, in the coming year, we're inviting all of our congregations to symbolically and finally support those plots of lands with this fund. Each congregation that contributes $375 or more is invited to decorate a quilt square that we will send you. Now, why are we sending quilt squares? Well, over the centuries, quilts have had great meaning to many people. They have helped celebrate many major lifetime events. And in fact, in the 1800s, they were often sold to raise money for various causes. During times of slavery, it was believed that quilt patterns contained hidden messages and that these messages helped guide slaves on their journey to freedom. So that the square that you complete will be combined with others from around the Synod and made into one large quilt. We hope to have over 150 of these squares. The completed quilt will be presented to the bishop at our next assembly, and it'll hang in the Synod office after that. So this quilt, this new quilt, our quilt, will represent our desire to learn about the past, create a better future, and enrich the lives of emerging leaders of African descent. Later this month, we will send a quilt square to each congregation along with instructions on how to decorate it. Don't worry, there are many ways to decorate your square, and luckily, you do not have to be a quilting expert. Now, we know that the amount that each congregation can contribute will vary, and we recognize that your donation represents your commitment to join this challenge, to grow an awareness of the causes of racial inequities that we have today, to accept that the Lutheran Church has both benefited from and been harmed by these inequities, and to move towards healing. As the year progresses, you have heard how we will be continuing to add materials to the Bishop's Challenge webpage to help you with your efforts. You may want to start by showing a video of what you saw today, the Bishop explaining her challenge, and then the Jehu Jones story. Both of these will be available through the Synod website. We encourage you to show them to your congregations to get the ball rolling. So, as I mentioned, later this month, you will be mailed a packet, and this will include a poster, the quilt square, directions for decorating it, a calendar with a year of ideas and offerings, and a congregation commitment card. We'd like you to take this card to your church council to discuss and make decisions on how you and your church are going to participate in this challenge. You may return it to the Synod office at your convenience. Thank you again for your willingness to learn and to participate in this important endeavor.
Good morning. My name is Lamar Rouse from Cross of Glory Church in Aberdeen. The calendar with this year of ideas and offerings mentioned by Carla and the team will include learning opportunities, a new Bible study, and this winter, the bishop will host a synod-wide book discussion on The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. We're also looking forward to a presentation on the role of quilt making in African American culture, including as part of the Underground Railroad. This is an important year for our New Jersey Synod, a year when we can face again and learn the history of how African Americans have been harmed by a system that has sometimes been unjust, from slavery until today, and how our Lutheran Church has both benefited from and been harmed by this sin. Some of us may find it hard to face. Trust me, I know as well as anyone, race is a difficult topic. I'd rather be talking about the Mets, I tell you. We may prefer to forget the past and to look ahead to the future, and our future is bright. Some may feel that we're not responsible for what happened in the past. Why should we feel that we should be called to repair this breach? But I believe that until we understand why inequities exist today, we are hampered from moving from, and we are hurt by these inequities. I believe part of accepting our call to repair the breach is learning our history, embracing it, and how it contributes to our present, how it can lead us to our future, and that this will help our Lutheran Church again be a true agent of reconciliation. We ask that you go back to your congregations with this challenge in your heart and on your tongue. We know it's difficult. We hope that at our next year's assembly, we'll be able to present an amazing quilt to our bishop, symbolizing the many plots of land the Lutheran Church could have given to Jehu Jones and his congregation in 1834, and representing our congregation's commitment to being repairers of the breach today. Our future is bright, New Jersey Synod. Let us embrace this moment. This is our time. And remember to share your thoughts on why it is important for the New Jersey Synod to accept the bishop's challenge at this time. Text challenge 52886 and let us know. Again, text challenge 52886. May God bless you. May God keep you. Please let us be as one. Amen.
Thank you. Let's take a moment right now to